Hi, I'm Rob Cosman. Welcome to my shop, Sharpening Hand Plane Blades on a Budget. If you're looking at what I do and thinking it's too expensive or too complicated, I'm going to introduce you to a stepping stone that will allow you to get a blade sharp enough to work, particularly softwoods, using one stone. Takes mere seconds. Watch this. I'm Rob Cosman, and welcome to my shop. We make it our job to help take your woodworking to the next level. If you're new to our channel, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell, which will alert you whenever we release a new video. Anytime we use a new tool or technique, we'll leave a description down below so that make it easier for you to find. All right, let's get back to work. In my 32 seconds to sharp video, and we'll put the link below, you'll see I use relatively expensive gear. This is something I do every day and I've done for years. I finish with a 16,000 grit stone, and my opening stone is 1,000 grit. There are two different micro bevels used. There's the famous Charlesworth ruler trick on the back, and for some people who have yet to be introduced to freehand sharpening, it's a little bit intimidating. I know people look at it and they think, how do I know those angles? Well, hold that thought. I'm going to show you a way to get started with just the one stone, the Trend diamond plate. That's what it looks like when it comes in the box. I'm going to walk you through a very short process that involves one micro bevel. Now, the nice thing about this system is it allows you to get your feet wet. It's very easy to do, and if you decide to go on, instead of having to replace something you've already purchased, you simply add to it. That's the beauty of it. But on softwoods, pine, even hardwoods like aspen or poplar, you'll be able to get satisfactory results with one stone and a process that takes 13 seconds to do. I'm not going to say it's going to give you great results in hardwood, but you can at least get started on the softer woods. So that turns your crank. Let me show you how it's done, and I promise you by the end of this, you'll be able to say to yourself, I could do that. All right, to make this as realistic as possible, I'm using a brand new stone, brand new blade and chip breaker, and I'll explain the whole process to you. First, the stone. It's made by a company called Trend. I found this about 10 years ago, been thrilled with it, made it part of my system. It's indestructible. It will eventually wear, but you'll get a long life out of it, and as long as you don't allow it to rust, you can drop it, you can do anything you want. Like I said, it's indestructible. There's a 300 grit side and a 1,000 grit side. We're only going to use the 1,000 grit side for what we're doing today. Now I'm going to use an original Wood River blade and chip breaker, and I'll walk you through prepping both. I'll take that screw off for what we're going to do right away. I'm going to use my 1,000 grit stone with honing oil. I typically use water or a mixture of water and something called Honrite, but for this, and because we're not using an additional water stone with the process, we can get away with just the oil. So the first thing we want to do is make sure that the chip breaker is going to meet the back of the blade properly. You don't want there to be a gap. Now, just in case you don't know this, when you put the two together, you should be able to see light. It only is designed to touch right up here at the very edge and somewhere back here. You want to make sure that when it does meet, that there is no gap at the front, where chips or shavings will get jammed. So what I like to do is set this down, working on the edge of the stone. I need something back here to elevate the back. So there's a negative angle underneath here. So the back part of the chip breaker has to be sitting lower than the stone. It just so happens that the blade is just about the right height. Now I'm just going to put a little bit of honing oil on there, and you could use any oil on this. It's just a matter of something to suspend the particles so they don't get clogged and to make it a little bit easier. 3 fingers. Stay within 1/4 of an inch of the edge. If you go over too far, you're going to bump back in here somewhere. You don't want to do that. Now, only a few seconds. I'm going to flip it over. I always like to see what I'm dealing with, and I'm looking to see where I'm making contact. So I'm making contact from about here over to here. This is relatively soft steel, this portion of the equipment, so it doesn't take very long to fix if it's out any amount. Now, if yours is really out of whack and you're going to need a lot of work, you can always flip it over and use the 300 grit side. Now, this is a lot more aggressive. Typically, what I use the 300 grit side for is dressing my finishing or my ceramic stone. You don't have to go fast, and you don't have to apply a lot of pressure. The diamond will do the cutting. Nice thing about this is once you've got it done, you never have to redo it. It's a one-time process. Okay, so I'm all the way over to this end, but I'm short about a little less than 1/8 of an inch on this end. Remember not to go in more than 1/4 of an inch. Now what you're going to notice is you're going to create a burr on the back side, and I'm going to show you how to take care of that. We're still not quite there. Try to distribute your pressure as evenly as possible. So I'm pushing down with both my thumb and my middle finger, as well as my index finger in the middle. Occasionally you'll fall off. Watch your fingers. You do need to be careful, because that edge with that diamond on there, although it doesn't feel really sharp to the touch, if you rub against it repeatedly, you'll cut through your skin rather quickly without even noticing it. Okay, now I'm going to do the rest of it on the 1000 grit side. I've created a burr on the back side. I don't want that. So that's fairly easy to get rid of. Since it's a fairly long bevel, I can set it right down on there and just rock it a little bit until you feel it. And then I'll just elevate it just a little bit off of that bevel and just move that a few seconds. Set it back on here. Back to the bevel. And it won't take very long before that little burr will break off. And if it doesn't, you can always take a piece of wood or your palm of your hand, depending on how tough your skin is, and just flip that back and forth until that breaks off. Now wipe off the oil. You don't want that to end up on your wood. And once you've done this, you don't ever have to come back and repeat it. About the only maintenance you have to do with a chip breaker is occasionally you're going to want to wipe off or get rid of all of the pitch that builds up on the back side. I typically do this to the 300 grit side before I use it to flatten my finishing stone. And what I do is run a piece of steel over there just in case there's any diamond that will break readily. I don't want it getting embedded in my stone. So take the back of a blade, back of a chisel, and just run it over that stone for 30 seconds or so. But I'm going to suggest you do it on the 1000 grit side as well if you're going to use this as your single or your one and only sharpening stone. All you're doing is just trying to break free any loose or near loose diamond. I'm not doing that as part of the preparation on the back of the blade. I'll show you how we do that. And before I go any further, I'm going to go ahead and do the back. So what we're doing, traditionally, you would flatten and polish the entire back of a blade, or I should say the entire, about from there forward. And the only part you would actually use would be right up at the very end. So a friend of mine in the UK, David Charlesworth, developed this technique back in the 70s called the ruler trick. Little thin steel rule on the side, keep it in the same place every time, elevates the blade less than a degree, and working on the opposite side of the stone, and I'm going to stay within 1/4 of an inch. If you come in too far, you're really altering the bevel. We want to keep it very, very shallow. So I'm going to use 3 fingers to distribute downward pressure, and I'm going to stay within that 1/4 of an inch. Now, I do this a lot, so I've got into a habit of dragging my pinky on the underside against the edge, the smooth edge, so that when I'm moving forward and back, I'm not fishtailing all over the stone. It may take a while to get the hang of that. Now, I'll do this just for a couple of seconds. Just want to check and see what condition the blade is in. and it's not bad. Now you can see if you look real closely, the blade is slightly concave, and we see we're making contact here and over here. So when we're done, we'll have a complete arc, and as long as it makes contact through the entire width of the blade, we're good to go. This prevents us from having to go in and flatten all of this first. All we have to do is just worry about that little strip right out at the edge. And this is a one-time procedure, so do it once, and from then on, it's just a 3-second process of removing any burr. All right, let's look again. Okay, so I can see that I've made contact all the way over. And this is where I'm going to go back in. I'm going to spend just a few more seconds, and by that I mean probably another 25, 30. And then I can stop and I'll be done with it. Okay, check that out. All right, so we're done. Never have to do that again. So now we're going to go through the actual sharpening process. This is easy. First, to help you understand why we do it the way we do it. If you look at your primary bevel, that's this, it's 25 degrees. The frog, which is the part of the plane that supports the blade, holds and presents the blade to the wood at 45 degrees. So the only part of this that ever touches the wood is right up here. So rather than go through and polish all of that surface, and there's quite a bit, what we're going to do is we're going to set it on the stone, referencing off that primary bevel, and then we're going to elevate 3 or 4 degrees. You can go up 4 or 5 degrees, just as long as you don't go beyond 45. We'll spend what makes about 10 seconds until we can detect a slight burr. At that point, we'll take the burr off, put it in the plane, and see how it works. Now, you want to learn to hold the blade the same way every time you do it. And the advantage of doing that is you will eventually develop the ability to get the exact same result every time. Now you might be asking, why is my sharpening station so low? Well, if you try to do this freehand sharpening at bench height, you're going to find that you're pivoting from your wrist as you do this, which is very difficult. Not only that, but if your stone, to avoid wearing your stone in one spot, you start your little circles here, and you recognize that I've got to cover the entire stone. So in the process of trying to do that and this at the same time, most people make a mess. What I discovered while teaching people to do this, if you lower your sharpening station to be just above knee height, it allows you to lean over the stone. And now you can move your pivot point from your wrist all the way up to your shoulder. Well, the farther away you get it, the easier it is to maintain that angle. And we only have to do it for 10 seconds. The other advantage is, instead of having to move my arm and in both the circular motion and forward and back, I can simply rock on my heel and toe while I'm doing this, and I'll cover the entire surface of the stone. So here's how we do it. 4 fingers to distribute the pressure as uniformly as possible along the cutting edge. I actually start by gripping the blade like this. I'm being right-handed. I use that hole as an indexing point. So I take my index finger of my opposite hand, I put it in there. Then I put my pinky, my ring finger, my middle finger, and I move this one over so that those 4 fingers are distributing the pressure as uniformly as possible along the cutting edge. Now, to keep these 2 hands working together, I squeeze my right thumb between my left thumb and my left index finger, like that. Just a comfortable grip, light to moderate, don't squeeze excessively. And I hold it on an angle like this. If you hold it like that and start doing this, you're going to find that your blade is exiting the side of the stone with every circle. If you hold it like this and do it, you'll stay on the stone the entire time. So find your primary. You just have to rock it to feel it. Now you don't want to polish all of that primary, so you come up just a few degrees and then lock that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Feel for a burr. If you can detect a burr that runs corner to corner, that's all you have to do. So what I'll now do is go back to my ruler trick, and this is the maintenance part. All we have to do is get rid of the burr. So I'm going to set that on there, pull it onto the stone, and spend 1, 2, 3 seconds removing that burr. Now the only downside to using oil is it gets a little bit messy. That's why I prefer water. But have a good rag handy. Now just in case the burr didn't get completely eliminated, you can use your palm if your skin's tough enough and just flip that back and forth. Be careful. Or if you don't want to do that, you can take a piece of wood and just back and forth. What you're doing is just flexing that little burr until it eventually drops off. Take your chip breaker, put it, the screw has to go in that hole, put it on sideways like that. Pull it down, slide it over. Now with holding it like this, you have lots of control. Slide that forward until it comes to within about a 32nd of an inch of the edge. Now, where is my screwdriver? Now, if you want more detailed instruction on setting up your plane, we did a video a while back, and we'll leave a link in the description below. Make sure that that's good and tight. The reason is you want, or part of the adjustment of the plane works on the actual chip breaker, and it has to bring the blade with it. You don't want it sliding. So you want a screwdriver that you can get a lot of torque with. And also, you'll notice that there's no taper on the end of that. So when it sits in there, it has good contact and it doesn't have a tendency to wreck the upper part of that slot. I'll leave you a link on that as well. Now I'm going to change out the blade. And this one's a little bit thinner, so I'm going to have to tighten that up just a bit. Make sure there's no debris on the face of the frog. You want good solid contact. I should say good positive contact. Make sure there's no debris in the back of the blade. Set that in place. Now there's 3 points of contact you have to be aware of, and this is in that video I just mentioned, but I'll say it again here. You've got the back of the blade laying flat on the face of the frog. You've got this thing right here called the yoke. That has to go into that little slot in the chip breaker, and you've got the bearing on the end of the lateral adjustment lever that has to fit in this long slot in the blade. All those pieces have to meet properly so that that'll lay nice and firmly on the face of the frog. Now with a light colored background, and I think that's just a little bit too loose. Snug that up just a bit. Sight down the sole. Now I see a lot of blades, so I'm going to retract, and then I'm going to use my lateral adjustment to get it as close to parallel as I can and tighten that up a little bit more. I want to pull the blade in all the way. I don't want to see any blade at all, but I'll make some fine adjustments just as it disappears to make sure it's parallel to the sole. Now I like to wax the sole of the plane. The reason is it just reduces the friction so that your effort is spent pushing the blade through the wood instead of pushing the plane over the wood. Now, this was a 13-second sharpening procedure if you eliminate the time we spent setting it up originally. So I'm going to start planing, and while I'm planing, I'm going to start advancing the adjuster knob. First bit of shaving came out on the right, so I moved the blade over just a bit. I'll advance it a little bit more. And on a piece of pine, which is relatively easy to plane, but you can pull off a decent shaving and you can get a pretty good surface. I say pretty good. Going to the 16,000, particularly in hardwoods, is going to make a substantial difference. But anybody can learn to get this first step. And when the time comes that you want to advance and take this a little bit further, you're not having to replace anything. You're just going to add to that system your 16,000 grit stone, your heavy holder, and you use the back side of that diamond plate to keep that stone flat. Now again, we did that video entitled "The 32 Seconds to Sharp." We'll leave that link down below, and that'll give you all the information you want and inspire you to go a little bit farther. I hope this helps. If you like my work, if you like my style of teaching, click on any one of these videos to help take your woodworking to the next level. And I've always said, better tools make it a whole lot easier. If you click on the icon with the plane and the chisel, it'll take you to our website, introduce you to all of our tools, and also talk to you about our online and in-person workshops. Good luck in your woodwork.